Hello and welcome to Monkey Knife Fight Live. Folks, I'm Connor Rowntree. Today I'm joined by Noor Zainab and Nick Whalen. We are breaking down the NBA Finals. The Milwaukee Bucks got it done, winning their first championship since 1971 in over 50 years. And Giannis, for my money right now, is the most popular athlete in the world. The guy goes out and drops 50 points in the championship game, goes to Chick-fil-A on Instagram Live and asks for 50 nuggets. Not 49, not 51, 50 nuggets. Noor, what do you think about Giannis and just winning the championship and all the hype around him right now?
Well, don't forget the half Sprite, half lemonade, no ice.
That's gonna be the court drink. First of all, that's a serial killer order. No ice. You're about to eat 50 nuggets and you don't want any ice with
Nick's
that?
pissed,
What is
Connor.
that?
No, I actually respect this, and I have to ask you, Noor. I saw some Canadian NBA guy that I follow tweeted a photo of, like, he said in Canada there's something that already exists that's like lemon Sprite.
I don't drink pops. Maybe I'm the wrong person to ask, but I could see that. Yeah, we mix a lot of stuff here too. We mix, like, go ahead, Connor.
Sprite lemonade is right there. Yeah, no, it is a thing up here.
I think it would be great. I have nothing against that. I mean, the ice thing, that's a little bit controversial, but
that's true. I agree with that.
The drink itself is a great idea. The fact that he's about to destroy 50 nuggets without an ice cube. Like, you know how long that's going to take? That drink is going to be boiling warm by the time he's done that.
He might be going like Joey Chestnut style, where he's like dipping them in
just
the lemonade and then just kind of wolfing them. Yeah.
76 hot dogs in 10
I think
minutes.
you guys aren't thinking like him though, because I think his thinking process is, I'm not going to get ice because the drink's already cold. If I get ice, it's going to water the drink down.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So he doesn't want to dilute the league like all the super teams that he was trashing. Can you believe that rant? Can you believe that though? Giannis going on air after the game and calling out basically everybody that's ever joined a super team. Nick, what's your take on that and his celebration after the game?
I think it's actually remarkably genuine how great his press conferences have been, because I think in sports overall, not just the NBA, we've become accustomed to a certain style and a very conservative, almost pre-rehearsed style, where it's kind of like you're playing every press conference not to lose. Just don't say anything that could be remotely controversial, and you're probably going to be fine. And that results in terrible audio. I mean, you see it even on the in-game broadcasts when they go to a coach between quarters, and it's like everybody watching is like, I learned absolutely nothing from this. This coach does not want to be here. He's like inching closer to the bench because he wants to go coach instead of do this interview. And that's kind of how post-game interviews have gone as well, where players are just so terrified to say anything that could be used against them. And Giannis has been, really thoughtful, I think, with these questions, not only after winning the finals the other night, but throughout the entire playoffs. So, I mean, the super team thing, I don't know. That didn't really register with me. We've heard that from so many players now, really dating back to like the 2010 Heat when that conversation really started. I think a lot of people want to say that was aimed at James Harden. I mean, you could say it was aimed at Durant. You could say it was aimed at LeBron. You could say it was aimed at like half the league at this point. But I don't know where we draw the line on what constitutes a super team. I think that's just how teams are built for the most part in the NBA. And it almost feels like I don't think you should be punished for that. It is the only acceptable way now to win a title is to be a really good player and then just have trash teammates around you. Like, that's the only way that it counts. I don't know. I mean, obviously the Bucks did it, quote unquote, the right way, but they also traded 1 million draft picks for Drew Holiday. And I guess just because he's not considered quite good enough that he's a true superstar, then it's okay. But if they had traded all those draft picks for a better player, then it wouldn't have been okay. I don't know where we kind of set the ground rules here.
Drew Holiday had the highest plus minus of anybody in the finals. It was like plus 122 over the 6 games.
Really? It wasn't Pat Connaughton's minus 21 in 22 minutes? I looked that up yesterday. I thought that might be the worst plus minus ever for a player who played fewer than 25 minutes in a finals game. It wasn't. It was close, though. Basically, he had, and I'm kind of taking some liberties with the numbers, but he basically had the worst role player game in a finals since Maurice Spates in 2015.
Now, Nick, let me ask you this. You're obviously from Wisconsin.
Obviously.
What happens if there was a super team assembled there and it didn't go like this? Do you think there would be a different aura or around this championship? Like, let's say if somehow Milwaukee got LeBron and Giannis and they did it together, or do you just think the fact they won, you're just taking it as it is?
Well, for one, I mean, I'm just imagining the series of events that would have to happen for LeBron James.
Yeah, obviously, I don't think LeBron wants to go live.
I'm taking my talents to Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. No, I don't think it would feel any different. I think Wisconsin fans, particularly Bucks fans, because we at least do have the 2011 Packers Super Bowl to cling to right now. But I was in school for 3 straight Rose Bowl losses. The year after I graduated, we lost the national championship game in basketball for University of Wisconsin. We lost in the Final Four in devastating fashion the year before. The Brewers lost in the NLCS a couple of years ago. Like, Wisconsin fans are in no position to turn down any title in any sport under any circumstances. I don't care if they found a way to sign like LeBron, Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard, whatever team you put on the court. Like, I think this team would have, and maybe it's being embraced a little bit extra because it does feel like, this team has the Wisconsin identity. Like, people have talked about that. Holiday has, Middleton has, Bobby Portis has. It does seem like this team does really fit the city in a unique way. But at the same time, I don't think it would be cheapened whatsoever. I think this is just a city that was extremely desperate for any sort of championship.
Or as an outsider looking into the city, you know the game, the basketball situation in Milwaukee. They've been so close for so many years, such a good regular season team. What's your take on just them, the elation that must be going on with their fans and their group? How good this just must feel to get it done with that core group of guys.
I'm on mute, my bad, sorry. I had the garbage truck outside and I was like, I don't mix on a roll right now. If you hear some kind of peep going on, he's gonna kill me. But no, as a Raptors fan, it's funny because I feel like we are Raptor fans because we hate the Bucks. Like, we hate what they represent, and it's just the best feud that we have going on in the playoffs all the time, right? And just given Giannis, like, we tried so hard to get Giannis even before he was drafted. There's video footage of Masai and Bobby trying to finesse Giannis and make sure that we get him, and then to go through the whole trouble of making sure that you have space, you have cap space for yourself in case you want to make that push for Giannis when his free agency hits. And I think we kind of convinced ourselves that we are getting Giannis. It's happening. We thought we're like, okay, he's connected to Masai, things are going to go down, it's going to happen. And Giannis was. Go ahead.
As someone that lives in the city in Toronto, there was a lot of hype, and the radio talk shows even talking about it. Welcome Giannis, welcome to the Raptors, and all that kind of talk. So you're definitely not off base with that assessment at all.
No, if you're not from here, I don't think you noticed how bad the propaganda was, but it was crazy. And like, I was guns a-blazing. I was leading the pitchfork. So it was a lot here. But when he signed, we got bitter. It was like, you got rejected, you got turned down. And in the moment, I was like, you know what? I hope nothing happens to the Bucks. Like, I hope they lose. I hope they don't even make the playoffs. Like, let's see how Giannis likes it now. Stay in Milwaukee, have fun. And then I think right after they beat the Nets, I was like, you know what? If anyone was going to stop the Bucks, it was going to be the Nets. And the second they beat the Nets, I was like, this is probably going to be the Bucks story for the season. And honestly, like, after everything, I was just so happy to see Giannis win everything. I was happy to see even Chris Middleton and Brook Lopez and Bud, like even Bud holding the championship. I was happy to see that. And of everybody else, I think in the league, Giannis is the one who deserves it the most because he's not wrong. He was the one who did it alone. He was the one who stayed where he was supposed to stay. He wanted to be loyal, and he could have gone anywhere. Like I said, we were throwing ourselves at him. And he said no, like, he wanted to stay where he was.
As just a fan of sports, he definitely gained a fan in me with the way he carried himself over the last 48 hours. He's out there, he's having fun. As to Nick's point, his interviews have just been so organic and so real. There's just nothing that you can't not like about
my
this
favorite
guy.
Was the Tinkle interview.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. One. How do I say it politely? I had to go take a tinkle.
I want to do a tinkle.
I had to tinkle, right? But the other side, the great thing when there's a championship is there's always two sides to it. There's the winning team and the losing team. And now what's next for Chris Paul? Because you're already hearing rumors from the Lakers are looking for a point guard. Paul's name's been thrown in. Russell Westbrook's name's been thrown in. Chris Paul just lost. And here's another interesting note. The referee that was reffing that game is now 18-0 against Chris Paul in NBA playoff games. There's just a fun
Can
fact.
I show a middle finger? Is that okay? No, Scott Foster?
No.
Sorry, Jason, I'll see it for Nick. I'll see it for next. Yeah.
Scott Foster is
middle fingers.
18-0 is now 18-0 against Chris Paul in playoff games, in NBA playoff games. So there's
a movement happening we don't know about.
That's whatever Jason has on the screen right now is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. But back to that point, though, because it is an intriguing conversation. What is the next step for Chris Paul? Noor, you're a big Chris Paul fan. What's the next step for, as you call him, the point god?
Honestly, I've always advocated for him to go to a team where I think they're kind of already set, but what they're missing is just someone who's really good at ball handling and becoming that point guard that they need to be able to facilitate the ball with. And that's why I was a big advocate for Chris Paul to Milwaukee, just because it made sense for Chris Paul to go there and help out Giannis. Same thing for Philly. I thought it made sense for him to, pair him up with Embiid. And then honestly, if I'm being selfish, I want to see him with the Lakers. This is probably his only chance to get that ring afterwards. LeBron's going to take him on his back. And that is also what they're missing, right? Like they currently just have Rondo, and Rondo's not going to do much moving forward. Well, I think Rondo's gone, right? What is the Clippers?
As far as I know, Rondo's been gone since 07.
Rondo's on the Clippers.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's the Clippers. Never mind, I'm wrong. Anyway, yeah, they clearly don't have a good ball handler for them. Then I think Chris Paul would be that person. And I'll pair that with LeBron, pair that with AD. You're looking at a pretty good assist ratio for Chris Paul, and then you're looking at a lot of scoring for the other guys too. So I personally, if he wants to win a championship, that's his best bet, the Lakers. And he could stay with the Suns, obviously, in terms of making sure that he's secure financially. But if he wants to win a ring, I think it's going to have to be Lakers. Again, it just comes down to what he wants, money or a championship.
Well, I think we all know he's chasing the championship just based off of his emotional presence in that series. And Nick, where do you think that Chris Paul ends up, and what do you think his next step is just as a player, and what do you think that is important to him? Because Noor brought up an excellent point. Is it getting the bag, or is it making sure that he locks down a ring? Because the competitive side makes me feel that he's hunting the ring. But at the same time, he did just get as close as he ever has and lost. So what's your take on that, Nick?
I don't know that he's ever going to get closer. Like, even if he goes to the Lakers next year, I mean, that would certainly help the Lakers, but I don't know that it would be a cakewalk to the finals. And, if everybody stays healthy, that's probably a Lakers Nets finals, and that's 50-50 at best. He was up 2-0 in this series with a really good, complete team that was essentially fully healthy. People still want to think that Chris Paul was banged up. Maybe he was a little banged up. He wasn't injured enough that I thought it really, affected his play. He was really good these last two games in the finals. It simply wasn't enough. So I don't know that leaving Phoenix is necessarily his best move career-wise. I think he still has a good opportunity, to maybe not get back to the finals, but at least be in the mix, and you catch a few breaks like you did this year, and maybe you have another shot. But you also have to keep in mind that he can't just go sign outright with the Lakers. I mean, I suppose he could. He'd be leaving like $30 million on the table. I mean, it would likely have to be a sign and trade situation where, Phoenix is helping one of its Western Conference rivals. It's basically handing them.
Isn't there another guy in Milwaukee right now that's trying to get out of $30 million? Big time quarterback. Oh yeah, Aaron Rodgers, right? Yeah,
I don't think they could sign and trade him for Aaron Rodgers. I don't know. I don't know if the Packers are interested in Chris Paul's services, but you're basically like, okay, so you're sending like Dennis Schroeder and Kyle Kuzma and some like way off future pick, maybe Taylor Horton-Tucker to Phoenix. Like, you have to keep in mind that the Suns would essentially have to sign off on that, and maybe they would, but it's not super appealing. So I mean, the idea of Chris Paul on the Lakers, I like, especially as someone who's been a LeBron sympathizer, we'll say, throughout his career. I mean, if it's would you rather have Chris Paul or Russell Westbrook on the Lakers? It's Chris Paul 100 times out of 100. I think the Russell Westbrook thing, that would be disastrous. It's like anybody who watched the Lakers in the playoffs, or even for most of the season, what was their number one issue? It wasn't ball handling. It wasn't attacking the rim. It wasn't a lack of, banged up 30-year-old superstars. It was no shooting. And it was a lack of role players who provided anything. I don't think bringing in Russell Westbrook and sacrificing what little depth you have to get Russell Westbrook, the worst shooting point guard in the entire league, I don't think that solves anything. I think that would further exacerbate some of the issues that they had.
Well, getting back into Milwaukee now, so what's the next step for the Bucks? Now they've got the championship. Are they going to chase another one? Are they going to be settled? What do you think the next step is for Milwaukee? Obviously, Nick, you're in Wisconsin. That's your team. That's your state. So what's the next step?
Yeah, well, the Bucks haven't called me yet for consultation. We'll see. I mean, I think it's essentially run it back, right? I mean, I think the biggest thing about winning a title when you're, especially if you're Giannis and to a slightly lesser degree Middleton and Holiday, is you're kind of good. Like Giannis is set. Obviously, he wants to win more. I mean, you could hear it in the audio. Right after the buzzer, he went and hugged Coach Bud, and right away he said, "Let's do it again next year. Let's do it again next year." That's just the way he's wired. That's the way most of these guys are wired. It's not like he's just gonna loaf it for the next 10 years and ride off into the sunset. But like all the pressure's gone. Like it same thing happened when LeBron won his first title, when KD got his, and if we're counting that, even when Kyrie won it with LeBron in 2016, like it just, all the pressure's gone. Lowry, sure. I mean, but it's even bigger. It's bigger when you do it in your mid 20s because, you're eventually if Giannis goes another 8 years without winning a title, then was it just a flash in the pan, and that whole conversation starts. But to just not have that hanging over him throughout his career is going to be huge. He's never going to be in that Damian Lillard situation where it's like, oh my God, I'm 31 years old all of a sudden, and I might only have 3 good years left. I need to win a title in one of these 3 years. And that creates this extreme pressure vacuum and can kind of lead to the degradation of some guys' reputations. It leads to asking out. It leads to going to a super team because that's their only option. I mean, Giannis can kind of do whatever now. Like they can come back, and if they bow out in the Eastern Conference Finals to the Nets next year, not that big of a deal. If that had happened this year, it's more panic, and it just keeps snowballing and snowballing to the next year. And if you don't win one, eventually it gets out of control. So the Bucks are in a really great spot. Obviously they don't have a ton of room to make roster upgrades the way that they built this roster. You're locked into max money for Giannis, max money for Middleton, max money for Holiday. You traded a bunch of picks to get Holiday. They're going to have trouble, I think, building a better roster. But, the counter argument to that is the roster that they have just won a title. So, you might not be able to go add this another big piece, but at the same time, you have a really good thing in place, and, you're going to have an opportunity not only next year, but for the next, 3-4 years to add guys, who normally maybe wouldn't sign for the mid-level, or, make a trade for, the PJ Tucker types. Like those types are always going to be, wanting to join this team. So you have a core in place, and now, you have the luxury of having a bit of a runway for once to not have this extreme pressure to win with Giannis right away because you finally got the job done.
Now, Noor, to Nick's point, obviously he said it. What is the next step? Because the core is there. What do you think the next step is for this team heading into next season and beyond? Are they going to chase another championship next year? Or are they not going to make it? What do you think? They have the core, as Nick said.
I think once you win a championship, it's a high you can't come down from, right? So you just want to chase the next one. Even as a fan, you're just like, this is it. I want it next year too, and the year after, and the year after. So obviously, being the competitive athlete, being an organization that wants to win and that's put themselves in a position to win year after year, especially in the regular season, I think obviously their job is going to be to win next year. Whether that's going to be easier, I don't know about that. You're going to probably see a healthier Nets team. You're going to see a healthy Raptors team. You're going to see a healthy team altogether. So I'm not sure what their process is going to be like next year, but for sure the aim is going to be there to win the championship again. And like Nick said, what they have right now is working for them. So why mess that up? But I do want to add, I don't want to be that person all of a sudden already. It's been like 2 days you guys won. But Giannis did say he's not leaving until he wins you guys a championship. So, I mean, he won. Like,
so
he's going to opt out.
Now it's time.
Really quick, guys, if you just to recap what happened on the more or less side, some shameless self-promotion here, if you don't mind. Giannis's third worst game was a 41-point game. So, he did pretty well on the more or less side. We didn't have a projection for the first one. And we'll get into Booker too, but I just wanted to make sure we get to these as well.
That's absolutely insane. Like, look at those statistics just from the point side. We're not talking about the block. We're not talking about the little things that he does on the court to win the games. If you just look at his numbers, look at those point totals. 50, 42, 41, 32. 26 and 20, that happens, but goodness gracious. Holy
And to
moly.
think like we're like, 26 for Giannis.
That was the game when that was his first game back after the injury too. We had no idea what he was going to
He was on a hyperextended knee.
And apparently,
that
wasn't he also sick after game 5? I heard he also got IV treatment.
Yeah, he had cramps,
Apparently, right? Yeah.
abdominal
I'm not
cramps.
sure what he was sick with, but apparently, right after game 5, he had to go get IV treatment, and his status was kind of uncertain for game 6. And then he comes and scores 50 points.
Guy's a full-blown Spartan. Guy's just a
Crazy.
Greek warrior. The other side of
Should
it,
have come to Toronto.
Devin Booker obviously had some killer games, 42 points, 40 points, 31 points. And then the 10-pointer in the 19-point night. I mean, 19 points in an elimination game. Rattled a bunch of missed threes, was throwing bricks. It just, I don't know. What's your guys' take on Devin Booker in game 6? Because for me, it looked like, I don't know if he looked like he wasn't mentally there. I don't know what it was, but he looked almost a step off on the screen. Or what was your take on Devin Booker in game 6?
I just felt he had no impact. I didn't really see Devin Booker.
He was just floating around out there.
He was just acting like another Suns player, not like the best Suns player on the court. And he did not have an impact. I honestly couldn't even give you any highlights of the game that stood out for me for Booker. It was just crazy because I remember at the very beginning, the first quarter, the Bucks had a pretty decent lead. I think they were up by 15 points at one point. And towards the very end, the Suns had pretty much caught up. So I was like, oh, it's a series. It's a game now. Let's see what happens. And they didn't really do anything with it. Like towards the fourth quarter, it was
going into halftime. I believe
it
came back and tied it going into halftime. And they were up a good 13 points, the Bucks were. So
in the first quarter, yeah. And then fourth quarter, it did not seem like it was going to be a Suns game. Like there were moments where Suns were making a couple of runs, but you just kind of knew that, it's the Bucks night. The Bucks are going to take it. And like I said, with Booker, it just didn't really feel like he was even on the court. He didn't really make an impact in any way. I kind of had him over. I thought he would have a big night, just knowing that they have to rely on him for the scoring portion for the most part, at least. And for him to kind of have a very quiet game, like a 19 for Booker is really, really quiet. So for him to have a very quiet game like that is especially a finals game where it's an elimination game, it's massive. But I think we need to give a massive amount of credit to the Bucks defense. They did a phenomenal job with the backcourt, and they made sure that the Suns would have to rely on role players, and the role players just weren't able to come through.
Now, if we have any Phoenix fans listening to us, what do you think their next step is as a franchise? We talked about the Bucks. We talked about they have the core in place. They can chase championships for the next season or two. But what's the next step for the Suns? Because we mentioned how there's Laker rumors with Chris Paul. Obviously, Devin Booker doesn't look great right now with how everything ended in this series, with the turnover at the end of Game 5, with the lack of shooting or the lack of successful shooting in Game 6. So I'm assuming the atmosphere around Phoenix can't be too strong right now. Nick, what do you think the next step is for the Suns?
Well, the first step is figuring out what the Chris Paul situation is, because if he's not back, then you have to figure something out. I mean, you're going to take a step back if he doesn't return. And that's the type of situation where, you don't all of a sudden have like $40 million open. It's like he's either back or you're kind of losing that spot, and you can't just go sign a different star to fill it. So that's the main thing. I mean, it's kind of decide if you want to run this back and focus more short term, spend a ton of money, with an owner who's historically has resisted spending a ton of money to chase a title. And, kind of like I said before, you have to look at it and say, do we realistically think we can do this? Did so many things break our way this year that we got lucky to get where we were and we didn't really finish the job? Can we realistically get back there? If the answer is no, and you still re-sign Chris Paul, then you risk kind of setting yourself back, especially financially, over the next 1 to 2 seasons. If you kind of cut your losses with Chris Paul and say, this was an amazing 1-year run, we almost got it done. We won 2 games in the NBA finals. But we need to focus on building this core. Then you're basically taking yourself out of title contention for a short period of time. And you have to focus on finding that third guy who's your long-term fit next to Booker and Ayton, not just a guy who's kind of an older rental like Chris Paul. So they're in a really tough spot, and Milwaukee kind of would have been in a very similar spot had they lost. Like both of these teams, I think in a lot of ways, and you'd be hard pressed to find anyone I think who, reasonably wouldn't disagree with this. Both these teams had a lot of luck on their way to the finals. And, both of them, I think, really needed to close it out. These are both cities with long title droughts. The Suns have never won one, the Bucks 50 years. There's not a ton of star power other than Giannis Antetokounmpo in this series. And we're used to seeing LeBron, Kawhi, Curry, Durant. for none of those guys to be in the finals, for this to be the matchup, both these teams needed a lot of help along the way, and both of these teams like really needed to finish it out. So, Milwaukee, like we were saying, like they kind of have the luxury now of, even if things don't go great over the next 2 years, they can always say, well, we won the title. I mean, they're in the same spot that Toronto was in, or after 2019. That just buys you a ton of cachet. It buys the entire organization, the fans, the players. You have a good like 3 to 5 years where you can kind of do whatever. You can get the 4th pick in the draft, and it's like, hey, we won the title 2 years ago. Not a big deal. So the Bucks are in that place, and now Phoenix is
I feel like
kind
that
of
was a subtle shot at the Raptors.
No, not at all. I think
not
it's
a
like,
shot at all. It's a compliment for me.
Yeah, it's like you got your title. Like everything's good. I mean, at some point that wears off, but
and we get a generational talent.
Especially for teams like Toronto and Milwaukee that aren't, you're not the Lakers, you're not the Celtics. There's not necessarily a title expectation. There's title hope, but there's not an expectation. And once you win it, it takes a long time for that goodwill to wear off.
Well, that's why the audience was going absolutely ballistic, right?
Nor,
any final thoughts on the Suns for next season? And on the audience, for that matter.
Yeah, you know what? By next season, just wait. The term crowd is going to be a next to no thought. It's going to be all about the audience. But in terms of Suns, I'm just excited to see what happens. I'm excited to see what's in the future for Chris Paul, what they all decide to do, what his contract's going to look like if it's not with the Suns, if it's with the Suns. And I think like I said this before too, I feel so happy for Giannis because of everybody in the league. I think he's the one person who really deserves it. He mentioned it himself. He was right. There are so many super teams and he could have taken the easy way out so many times. Everybody was throwing their clothes and everything at Giannis, and he's just like, no, I'm a one woman man, and that's it. And he just stayed with the Bucks. That's it. And and that was like that. I respect it too. See, like, I love that. So I was like, no, you know what? He deserves to win. And with Chris Paul too, I just thought, like I said, that's probably one of his last chances to win. I think for anybody else on that team, they're all so young. Booker, Ayton, they're only getting better, and the organization's only gonna find better pieces to suit around them to make sure that their best skills are pulled forward from that pairing. But I would just be more concerned about individual pieces. And with that being said, yeah, it would pretty much just be Chris Paul about what's going to happen with him. I think Suns, I don't know if they make it out in the finals next year. Probably not. They're going to be going through a lot. Like Nick mentioned, everybody went through a lot of set of obstacles that also had to deal with luck, and they were lucky to have that on their side because that's what got them to the finals. But I just don't see the path being that easy again for either teams next year, no matter what happens. So we'll see. It'll be interesting.
I'll tell you one thing. I've been extremely, extremely lucky to come on there and talk the NBA Finals with you two over the last 2 weeks. It's been an absolute blast. To all of our Monkey Knife Fighters at home, our audience, our crowd, we will be back in October. Noor and Nick, or as his name is saying, Ron Dane will be coming to join us.
That must be a mistake.
Yeah, well,
this is Ron Dane. Yeah, I was like John Doe. Is that what he's trying to say?
Anyway,
no, opposite.
Everyone at home, thank you so much for tuning in. We will be back with Nick and Noor in October for more Monkey Knife Fight Live with the NBA Finals. Make sure you tune in tomorrow for UFC Vegas 32 and the pre-fight programming there. Folks, I'm Connor Rowntree. That's Noor Zainab. That's Nick Whalen. Thank you so much for joining us and tuning in for the NBA season. Cheers, folks. And remember to hit it hard.